Curious, the first ever axe hero, will he be any good at all? Let's go ahead and test that out and see if he is. And if you guys are noticing the damage that I'm doing, yeah, I would say he's actually pretty decent. Alrighty boys, welcome back once again to another video. How you guys doing? Guys, today we're going to be talking about the newest mythic hero known as Dennis Jr. in Fortnite Save the World. Just yesterday we did talk about his team perk, and then today's video we're finally going to be talking about the hero himself, because he's actually pretty special as he is the first ever axe hero Save the World has seen, and it's been 10 seasons, so it's kind of a big deal. So let's go ahead and talk about him. If you guys do want to earn Dennis Jr., go on over to the Long Road Home quest line, go to quest page 4 out of 4, and then you will unlock him on the Forever Ned quest. If we go on over to the command center and take a look, this is going to be the loadout that I'm using with Dennis Jr. Now what Dennis Jr. does is that if you go on over to his perk, he has the Shredder Plus. Axe eliminations have a 37% chance to grant Rock and Rift, which will increase damage by 50% and melee attack speed by 32%, and this will decay over 8 seconds. If we take a look at the abilities on Dennis, we're not exactly looking at any good abilities. Going Constructor is absolute trash, Rosie is worthless, and Bull Rush is actually the one good ability he has. Of course, he is a Constructor, so you can also use your base, but then again, that is actually classified as a trap. So Dennis Jr., the first ever axe hero. Now, as we had discussed yesterday, this guy actually comes with the team perk, which is totally rocking out, and we're going to be using this yet again. This is going to allow us to have 160 extra crit rating whenever we have the Rock and Rift active, and it's also going to heal us every single time that we activate it, and we are going to be activating this via axe kills. For the support team, I have Subwoofers and I have Fumble. The reason I have Fumble is because we are a melee hero, and as we are meleeing enemies, we can get footballs on the ground, and these footballs will heal us whenever we do pick them up, so it's definitely going to help us out with our survivability. Subwoofers, this is to help us actually get the buff to start off with, and then start getting some axe kills to then prolong that buff. We have Corrosive Strikes because this is a crit-based build. We have Plasma Arc. Now, this is going to allow our energy damage to chain to other enemies. The reason I do have this is because since this is a melee build, you want to be able to kill as many enemies as possible. And with the axes that I'm using in today's video, they are all energy. And this is going to kind of zap over to other enemies. We're already going to be doing massive amounts of damage. This is going to help us with some wave clear, and it's also going to help us keep this buff active for as long as possible. And lastly, we have Survivalist for survivability. The gadgets are Adrenaline Rush and Slow Field. Now for this video, I actually maxed out a melee weapon, which is something I don't do very often. We actually maxed out the Argon Axe, and for the Argon Axe, I have a double crit damage, damage to slowed and snared, as well as some extra armor. This will be the axe that we will be using because it comes with a base crit rating of 30%. So even if we don't have the buff activated, we're still looking at a pretty decent amount of crit hit chance before we even get there. So I'm going to be using the Argon Axe. So what we're going to do in today's video is we are going to go ahead and pop into a power level 124 zone. We're going to do a smasher test, and we're going to walk around and murder a bunch of stuff, and then I'm going to talk about this hero, if I like him, if I dislike him, the pros and cons, and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Alrighty boys, so here we are in game with Dennis Jr. We have a little bit of a smashy boy over there, a few husks between us and him, and we also do have a few encampments around the map, as well as an elemental smasher to do a bonus test on. Now of course, one thing I do want to mention before we actually start off with this smasher test is the hotbar that I'm rocking on this character. If you guys look at the bottom right, you guys will notice that I have a ranged weapon, an axe, and I have the wafers. Now the purpose of doing this specifically, you don't have to run this if you don't want to, but I'm using the Wraith because I do want some sort of long range damage. I am a constructor, I don't really have much mobility, so I am going to need some way to kill husks, some way to kind of bridge the gap between me and some other husks. So I would recommend running a ranged weapon, and because this one is energy, it does go hand in hand with Cyberclops. Another thing, of course, is I am running the Argon Axe, which is my personal preference for using whenever it comes to this hero, as well as the wafers. And the wafers are extremely important to stock up on because these are going to be your saving grace essentially. Instead of whacking at a husk and not having any crits whatsoever before your actual buff buff goes off, you can actually eat one of these wafers, and then you will go ahead and you will already have the buff, so you don't have to worry about, you know, your crit chance. You know, if we take a look at the Argon Axe, it's already at 80%, and all we had to do was eat a wafer. And even though it only lasts for 8 seconds, that still gives you plenty of time to refresh the buff, because you're already going to be doing tons of damage, and you will be able to get those axe eliminations with this character, and then refresh it and allow you to keep on doing those crits. So let's go ahead and jump on down, go say hello to that Smashy boy, say hello to that Smashy boy as well, and just kind of talk about Dennis Jr. and, you know, really just talk about how good of a character he is, or how bad of a character he is, and we're just going to ignore what just happened. Let's go ahead and run on over to the Smashy boy and see exactly what kind of damage we can do. Now, it looks like we are making some friends, so I'm going to go ahead and clear these guys out. There we go, we went ahead and got the buff. I didn't want to waste one of my wafers, seeing as these guys are really weak. As you guys are seeing, the Cyberclops buff is going off, and we're actually able to kill some of the husks. I was actually able to kill a husk behind another one because it ended up shocking him. And this is something that's actually going to be happening a lot whenever you are using Cyberclops in your support, because you do so much damage with your axe that whenever you do end up shocking an enemy, half the time it is going to be killing them, but it also, you know, does depend on what kind of enemy you're facing. So here we are with the little bit of a Smashy boy right here. I probably should switch over to a pain train so I don't accidentally chain my damage to the Smasher. So let's go ahead and get rid of these guys that are guarding him so that we can actually do the test properly. We're not going to worry about the Riot Boy. Let's go ahead and throw down, well, okay, he's kind of on top of a car. I don't know what to do about that. We're just going to do that. Let's get rid of this Riot guy, and then we're going to go ahead and test it out on the Smasher. So here we go. He's actually a little bit mad. Oh. Okay, let's go ahead and throw down a slow field and test out this this kind of axe damage against the Smasher, because I know a lot of you guys have been curious, you know, the first ever axe hero, will he be any good at all? Let's go ahead and test that out and see if he is. And if you guys are noticing the damage that I'm doing, yeah, I would say he's actually pretty decent. That was pretty fast. That was pretty fast for a Constructor Axe Hero to just melt a Smasher away. That was pretty impressive. So, as you guys noticed, I did end up using, you know, my wafers. I ate my wafer right before I attacked the Smasher, so that I got really good crit hit chance, and I just laid waste to him. Of course, we are using the Argon Axe with tons of crit hit damage, and it got rid of him in a pretty timely fashion. The Corrosive Strikes that were going off were very good as well, as they were able to just tick away huge amounts of health on that Smasher that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. And yeah, it is pretty strong. Now that we did that Smasher test, let's go ahead and say hello to this Elemental Smasher over here. We're going to be doing 75% less damage, but that's okay. I don't exactly have a slow field for him just yet, so I'm going to kind of ignore him. I'm going to run over here and kind of take care of these husks, this Taker and this Blaster and all that. So we're going to eat our wafer. Come here, Taker. We're just going to practically one-hit him just about. Go ahead and roll up on this Blaster really quick. Take care of his friend. Well, I guess just kind of lightly slap his friend, because I think our buff ran out, or we just weren't lucky because it was decaying. Kill the Blaster. We killed the other husk because of the Cyberclop buff and all that kind of stuff. So there we go. Let's go and say hello to the Smashy boy right here, even though we don't have a slow field. Let's get him to the smash, eat the wafer, and let's see what we can do with this Argon Axe. And so, as you guys can see, it is a little bit slower because, well, he is, of course, you know, elemental, and I also don't have my slow field, so I'm kind of missing a few shots here. But whenever those crits do go off, you can notice the huge amounts of health that gets ticked off of that Smasher, and it's pretty strong. Now, I want to go ahead and jump into my my general feelings about Dennis Jr. because, as you guys know, I am not much of a melee hero. I don't really care about melee in this game, so I have a little bit of a different opinion, I would say, than most other people, because I already don't really care too much for melee. So, what exactly do I think about Dennis Jr.? Well, he's a Constructor, and because he's a Constructor and he's also a melee character, I personally don't really like that. I don't like being able to play a melee character that doesn't have that much mobility. Something that I noticed with my extended playtime with Dennis Jr. is that you do get caught out very often, and you are eligible to die a lot faster than most other heroes whenever it does come to the melee weapon variety. You know, with ninjas, if you get in trouble, you can throw down a smoke bomb to instantly heal yourself. You know, you could jump out of it, you can do whatever. Whenever you're playing a constructor, the only option you really have, especially with this one in particular, is your bull rush, and that's about it. That's why I try to use, you know, adrenaline rush. I try to have these wafers. I try to use that fumble perk so that I'm able to try to stay as alive as I can, you know, as much as I can. But even then, I do notice that it still doesn't work. Now, when using Dennis Jr., what I also noticed is that he's actually really good and probably best used against mini bosses. Whenever I found myself going against mini bosses with Dennis Jr., he was at his absolute prime, because this guy does put out a lot of damage, and most of the time against husks like these, you don't really need that damage. You know, I'm actually going to go ahead and test and see here. We might die, but you know, you don't necessarily need that damage, because these guys are already going to get one hit most of the time anyways. You don't exactly need Dennis Jr. rolling up and dealing huge amounts of damage to them where it's just overkill. You know, it's just not worth it at that point. And so what I did notice is that going against, you know, mini bosses, you are going to get the most use out of Dennis Jr. Seeing as he is a constructor, of course, he kind of is meant to be on the defending wave of a mission, as he is, you know, the constructor. He's supposed to hold everything together, and, you know, it just kind of makes more sense for him. Another thing that's great about Dennis Jr. and kind of what plays into that whole defense role is that because you are using this team perk, okay, we're actually about to die. Okay. Because you are using this team perk, any elimination whatsoever is going to give you your buff, which means that trap eliminations are going to buff you and allow you to have this up, you know, which is very, very nice. But you do have to be using Wildcat if you want that buff to be active. So, you know, you could trade out Fumble if you would like. But, you know, that's a really good thing for Dennis Jr., I guess, because the gas traps will get the kills for you, and then you are going to have a buffed axe, and you're going to be able to do a lot of damage, you know, without needing wafers or without needing anything else like that. We actually do have another smash over here we can test stuff out on. But just all in all, man, I don't really feel Dennis Jr. I had a few people come in my chat the other day, and they were talking to me. They're like, Joey, Dennis Jr. is amazing. You got to try him out. He's the best melee hero in the game. And after spending a lot of time with Dennis Jr., I just don't like him, and I'm kind of sad to say that. One thing that I can say, though, is that he actually is pretty useful if he is in the support slot. If you were using, you know, the totally rockin' out team perk, you could use him as one of your rad heroes to allow you to use that team perk, which is really useful. And then you could use somebody like, you know, Deadly Blade Crash or whatever to get your Corrosive Strikes as a commander perk. You know, I have noticed that that could be a little bit more useful, but for the sake of this video, you know, playing as Dennis Jr., I want to make sure that I'm using him in the commander slot for the review, and just with him in the commander slot, to me personally, he is pretty underwhelming. But let's go ahead and get this last smasher test out of the way, if he will pay any attention to me. Okay, there we go. He's mad about it. Okay, let's go and get the slow field down, and let's go ahead and get this last little bit of damage out against an elemental smasher with Dennis Jr. So, you know, as I was saying, the damage output is pretty good. The survivability really isn't that great, and he's kind of only useful in one area of a mission, which is the defense wave, which, you know, like I said, he is a constructor, so it kind of does make sense. But comparatively to other melee heroes, he is not worth it in the commander slot. He is pretty good in the support slot, though, due to the new team perk. But yeah, guys, that is pretty much it for me in this video. This is the first ever Axe hero that Save the World has ever seen, and although he is kind of okay in the commander slot, your main purpose with this guy will be throwing him in the support slot so that you can get a lot of buffs from your, you know, your team perk and whatever. So if you are planning on using any axes, I would kind of recommend Corrosive Strikes over everything else, and this guy in the support slot. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for me. Let me know if you guys had a different opinion than I did, because like I said, I don't really like melee as is, so I may be a little bit different than you guys. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I greatly do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.